What's up, my DeFi Kingdoms family? Tosh here. We have a super important video for you today. So if you've been watching DeFi Kingdoms, there's been a lot of drama going on in different social media channels. Today I'm going to catch you up on all of that. First off, we're going to focus on the lock jewel exploit, everything that went on there and the team's approach. Then we're going to talk about the LootSwap drama, in particularly in relation to Frisky Fox and the initial liquidity being provided. And then I'm going to talk about my thoughts and my perspective and a little bit about the future of DeFi Kingdom. So stay tuned. Super important video. You're not going to want to miss it. Okay, first things first, there is no financial advice in this video. This is educational content only. If you don't mind hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel, would help me out significantly. Appreciate you. Okay, let's first talk about this lock jewel exploit and what it even was. So how it works is that when you set out some miners at the start and the end of the quest, what it does is that it checks to see if the lock jewel balance is still in the person's wallet, and if it is, then everything will go as planned. So they will mine that lock jewel, and then at the end of it, they'll claim from that same pile. Now, during this intermediary time, it doesn't really matter if the lock jewel balance is in the wallet. So what other people were doing is that they would start their quest on the first wallet, then they would send the lock jewel balance to wallet number 2, start the quest here, and then they would bounce us around to different wallets. And then when all the time was up, then they would send the lock jewel balance back to the first wallet, claim that, and then send it to the subsequent wallets to do all of their claims, effectively mining at much quicker rates than intended. This is an exploit of game mechanics that is not going to be allowed and was not intended. So what made this exploit even more profitable is that instead of setting 6 miners on each wallet, what they would do is they would only send 1 miner on each wallet. And the reason for that is that you have a 10% chance of a jackpot whenever you have your lead miner. So effectively, if you have 6 different wallets and all of them are mining at the same time, then you have 6 different chances at the jackpot, as opposed to just the 10% chance of the jackpot if you were only mining from one balance. So this actually accelerated unlocking rates very significantly for the people that were using this exploit, and it wasn't actually that hard for people to do because there were bots floating around that would automate this process. Now, this exploit has been known about since January, and the team has known about it since then. And actually, at the end of January and peeking into early February, there was a governance vote that was proposing a change that would have fixed this. The change was to actually put a cooldown on the transfer of lock jewel balance. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but let's look at the numbers here. So at first, not many people were really using this exploit. So in January and February, there was not that much jewel that was being unlocked via this exploit. Now, as time went by, more people started to adopt this exploit and started to mine their lock jewel faster than intended. I was not one of those people, just to clarify and put on the record. But even worse is that when we saw in about late March, early April, is that somebody that actually created one of these bots was sending it freely to anybody who knew about this Discord channel where it was being spread. So that significantly put buy pressure on miners and increase the amount of people that were using this exploit because they were unlocking their jewels so quickly with it. So at the peak of this exploit at the end of April, we were seeing about 24,000 jewel per day that were being unlocked using this method. So obviously this is a fairly significant amount. Let's look at the numbers here to see how significant it was. So if jewel was averaging around 450 a day, that's putting about $108,000 of extra sell impact every day. So that explains a lot of just the slow bleeding of price for jewels, because this jewel that's being exploited is just being dumped because they are getting this jewel unfairly, and why not just cash it into stable coins? Although assuming that, and these numbers are fairly accurate here, that we had about $10 million of daily transaction volume, this is only about 1% of that transaction volume, but note that it is all sell pressure, so that does put some impact on it. Let's talk a bit about this governance vote that happened at the end of January or in early February. So this was to effectively put a cooldown on the transfer of locked jewel. So if there's a cooldown, then you won't be able to hop that locked balance across all of those different wallets, which would effectively solve this exploit. Now, at the time, a lot of people didn't really know what they were voting on, or not really sure that what this cooldown was going to do, because it wouldn't really prevent locked jewel sales, which a lot of people were worried about at the time. This only really prevents that exploit that not a lot of people were aware of at the time. Either way, it did pass with overwhelming majority at about 97% approval of our ex-jewel voters and did get passed. Now, the problem was that this passed, but in the end of April, no action was taken on this governance vote. Or to better phrase that, no communication about action occurred about this governance vote. So when more word was getting out about this exploit, Frisky Fox took a bunch of different actions. First of all, Mining Quest was shut down temporarily. They talked about the situation and moved towards some solutions for it in both the short and medium term. So the short-term solution was to turn mining off and get the team together and find a solution for this, as it was recently found out that this was being exploited more and more and was starting to become a big issue. Frisky had explained that in the past that they tried to make the governance vote changes actually happen, but there were a lot of things that were getting into the way of that. So first of all, they would have had to totally redesign the jewel contract to implement this change. And what it would have done is that people would have to transfer their locked jewel balances over to a new contract. And then all of the sites that interact with the jewel contract would have gotten some skewed data, and would shown that the liquidity just got fully diluted immediately. So for example, on CoinGecko, it would show that all the tokens just suddenly got unleashed with that change. So there are a lot of different barriers to that. So the team, under this kind of pressure, they got together and thought of a new creative solution. So now when you transfer your locked balance, it cancels all of the mining quests. I want to give it out to the team because they worked really hard. They worked like a 14-16 hour day up until like 3 or 5 in the morning to get this change out, to get mining turned on in less than 24 hours, which I thought was just amazing. They also noted that this contract change was now possible with new tools that with companies that they've recently partnered with, getting everything rolling on AVAX and DFK chain. So a lot of people are saying like, okay, well, if they could have just fixed it in a day, like why didn't they do that 2 months ago? So first of all, they got those new tools that they were able to work with. I'm not a developer. I can't say for certain if these tools were necessary or helpful to make these changes, but they did note that this did help a lot in the process. And also just think about the pressure. Back in January, February, there was about 500 to 1,000 jewel being exploited every day. So it wasn't that big of a deal. Now when it became a bigger deal, that literally puts pressure on, and it makes it more urgent to approach these changes, especially when it's getting blown up on social media. So don't underestimate that power of urgency. The DFK team is everywhere doing everything, trying to get a system of 60 different employees organized. They have a lot to do, so I don't fault them for this one falling back on the radar temporarily, but definitely should have been communicated what was happening with that process, and that this governance vote not going into place was actually allowing people to exploit. I thought was kind of a shitty thing to allow happen without much communication. During this time, we were seeing jewel continue to drop even a little bit more rapidly than before. A lot of people were not happy that this was an issue that was voted on, but there was not action being taken. I thought the explanations for this were just fine, and everything kind of totally makes sense once you see the whole picture. But with the social media FUD that was being spread around, there was putting a lot of damage and sell pressure. And that's when some more FUD was spread around. Let's talk about LootSwap. So almost immediately after the locked jewel exploit was getting solved, more FUD was spreading around about DeFi kingdoms. This all started when there was a note about the white paper that had the initial liquidity address that was wrong. It actually turned out to be Sinstar, our lead artist at DeFi kingdoms. It was his wallet posted instead of the initial liquidity wallet posted, and this was starting to spread a bunch of different rumors without any clarification about what is going on. So it turned turned out that that wallet was incorrect on there. Again, it was SynStars and not the initial Liquidity wallet. And then Frisky Fox went ahead and explained what happened with this initial liquidity. So in the very start of DeFi Kingdoms, there was a private investor who was an acquaintance of Frisky Fox who put in $15,000 to provide the initial liquidity for Jewel. So what this was is that there was 2 million Jewel that was paired with $15,000 of the one token. And this was earning emissions the whole time attached to this account. So this account, what he told the initial investor, who was not very crypto savvy, is that this liquidity was to never be touched. It always remains within DeFi Kingdoms. However, you can collect the rewards on it, and that is like your return on investment. And since everybody was confident in Frisky Fox and making DeFi Kingdoms happen, the investor chose to do this. So Frisky Fox set up the account for this individual, and then after a little while, he ended up giving this account back to that individual to manage and showed him how to do everything. That person ended up recompounding in the gardens and played the game just like anybody else, but obviously has this huge garden stack that is giving out rewards that whole time. At this point in time, that investor has never touched that liquidity and remained true to their word. Again, they have actually collected the rewards from the liquidity, but they have not actually touched the liquidity that was initially put in because it would be a ridiculous amount and it would violate the agreement that Frisky made with his acquaintance. So what there has been talks about is that to move on is that they're likely going to burn this liquidity so it can actually never be touched by just burning the liquidity token. So what that does is it keeps all the tokens that are paired into the pool, but those tokens don't exist for them to exchange out anymore. I think they're still working on some of the logistics behind that. So if those tokens are burned, that person would not be able to earn emissions anymore. So it'll be interesting to see what approach they take, but they have noted that that is a plan in the future to burn that initial liquidity, as it has become a common practice in a lot of dexes. Now, as this little witch hunt was going on for DeFi Kingdoms, it really honestly felt like a coordinated attack against DeFi Kingdoms and Frisky Fox, so I have no evidence to prove it. There was noted that there was a transaction from a LootSwap developer over to a DFK wallet, assuming that Frisky Fox was associated with LootSwap and those developers. And if you aren't familiar, LootSwap was a DEX that was built on Harmony before DeFi Kingdoms ever existed that ended up being a giant rug pull. So both the developers took out a lot of money, pulled liquidity, and left the project. And then there was accusations that there was association between Frisky Fox and LootSwap, and even accusations that he was the main developer at LootSwap. So with all of this news going around, Frisky Fox did put out a letter that clarified a lot of things of what was happening with LootSwap. So he noted that he was actually associated with LootSwap, but he was not one of the main two developers who both ended up pulling. So he was actually known as Master Builder, that identity, and that what he essentially did was created the front end for LootSwap. Again, he did not pull any liquidity, was not involved in those actions at all, but he did help build out the software for Bounty. I'm not going to go through the entire contents of this letter, but I do have it in the description of this video if you want to check it out. But one of the key taking points is that Frisky Fox actually used LootSwap as a model of what not to do while building the DEX for DeFi Kingdoms. So a couple of the principles that really set the foundation for DeFi Kingdoms were actually established by seeing what we don't want to see from LootSwap. So the first was that never sell that initial liquidity, which has been done so far, protecting the dev funds and making sure that when devs are selling their jewel that they're earning, that the price impact is not so significant. And I've gone through the DeFi Kingdoms team handbook, and that is very clearly stated in there. And you can risk your position at DeFi Kingdoms if you are making huge transactions. You know, everything on the blockchain is recorded. Again, a lot of different things that were created out of this huge downfall of LootSwap that made DeFi Kingdoms better in the long run. With the release of all this information, the team had to make several different actions. So first of all is that the team sat everybody down at a round table, had a lot of open discussion and AMA conversations, and just to clarify everything and trying to build this trust back. That really was one of the things that set DeFi Kingdoms apart from any other project, is that they have a really solid team, great foundations, and that they've built this amazing trust with their community. This, I'm not gonna lie, these events definitely hurt the trust with the community, but I think that they really are doing everything to make up for it and keep things as clear as possible. So they had this really long round table. I'll also link the in the description the Sandwich Punch article that has the full transcript of this if you'd like to go through it. They go through a bunch of the different issues and I think clarify a lot, but also accepting that they did mess up, that there should have been more communication about all these different factors, and talking about ways that they can improve their approaches in the future. Also, to further build that trust, the team is going to have a doxing party this week where they're all going to get on a video call, reveal their cameras one by one, reveal their full names and what they have done in the past. So I think this is really bullish for DeFi Kingdoms in general. This has been one of the big breaking points for DeFi Kingdoms for a long time, and a lot of people have been skeptical about investing because Frisky is not doxed, but including Frisky Fox and most of the team members, they are going to have this reveal. So I'm really excited to see that this week, and I think it's a huge step towards building trust back into the community. Although we will know their identities, they still request to be called by their nicknames or aliases. It's really funny. They talked about in chat, where like still even talk to each other about that. It's like, oh, hey Dreamer, hey Fox. And it's like, oh, yep, this really has blended into our lives a significant amount. Let's talk price action a little bit. So before the team really got a chance to respond to all of this barrage of just FUD events, the jewel price did dip down to a low of about $1.20, way down. We haven't seen these prices since literally the first month of DeFi Kingdoms. So absolutely insane to see that get that low. I did end up buying the dip myself because I'm like, I believe in this team, I believe in this project, it's gonna come back. And what we're seeing right now is that the jewel price is now hovering around that $2 mark. I'm really curious to see what is going to happen with this. There are a lot of cool events that are coming up for DeFi Kingdoms. We are getting the Gen Zeros this week. I was lucky enough to win one in the Perilous Journey raffle yesterday. So I'm super excited about that opportunity. And coming soon as well, we have the DFK Arena, the DFK Duels that are coming out. Those are actually two different projects. And then we will see pets come out and some more land gameplay in the next coming months too. I'm pretty confident. So lots of bullish things for DeFi Kingdom still. I think it's a great project. I really don't think that either of these events really ruin the long-term goals of this project. Everything is still just build on mission to crush this. The team is still really confident. I was honestly a little worried before the round table that if the jewel price is crashing so much, are the people that are working for DeFi Kingdoms going to be motivated enough, since they are paid in the jewel token? It might result in a temporary pay decrease, but hearing everybody's sentiments from that round table discussion made me really confident that everybody is here to stay. Their mission is still something that I believe in. I truly believe DeFi Kingdoms can go huge and really change the world for so many individuals. For many people, these events were enough to get them to sell their full jewel bags or clear out their hero assets. And if that was you, I still totally respect your decision. Where I'm looking at it from is just the team, because a good team is going to make any project succeed, and this team really has it all. If we look at Cinnamon Bun and Sinstar and Purple Onion in the art department, they're absolutely killing it with all of the art releases coming out. Crystal Veil is absolutely gorgeous. Frisky Fox and team are Dreamer, great leaders. They're always reaching out to new connections and trying to find ways to make everything perfect for DeFi Kingdoms and the economy and the connections that we're making. The marketing team is unreal. Hubert Cumberdale and the game mechanics is so thorough. Mr. Fawn put up a blockchain with his team together in just a couple of weeks. Absolutely insane how much talent there is, and all this talent is super driven. So for me, I'm still incredibly bullish on DeFi DeFi Kingdoms. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Did the DeFi Kingdoms team do enough to earn your trust back? Are you buying more Jewel? Or what else do you think the DeFi Kingdoms team could have done better at this point? Obviously, a lot of these problems could have been solved earlier if they were focused on a little bit earlier, such as with the locked Jewel exploit, or if there was better communication from the start about the initial liquidity and what was going on with Fox and LootSwap as well. None of these things I think actually bother me or hurt the project, but I know it has hurt the sentiment of this community very significantly, so I'd love to hear your perspective on that if you'd like to shoot those in the comments. I also want to note that just seeing the price dip like this and all the drama around my favorite project definitely hurt me a little bit, and I found myself using some of my own mental health tips this weekend to keep my cool. And if you like to feel like you might need some of those mental health tips, make sure you check out my video on that where I go over how to keep your cool in the crypto space, because this world is absolutely nuts. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Tosh signing out. See you at the next one.